What does the Imperium believe? That is a very simple question, and it's actually more convoluted than you might think. After the events of the Horus Heresy, the explosion of the Imperial Creed, and the belief of the Emperor being a god basically spread across the stars. And today I will be going through, a history lesson as to how the evolution of the Imperial Creed spread. So without further ado, let's dive into this 40K lore. The forces of the traitor War Master, Horus, were defeated, but at a great cost to the Imperium. The Emperor's armies were shattered, entire worlds destroyed, and the Emperor himself wounded during his final battle, so much so that he was unable to speak to his subjects, let alone lead. The people of the Imperium struggled to come to terms with what they had seen and experienced, and for many, they had no explanation as to what would happen next. Often, it was only through the recourse of the old ways, the beliefs that had sustained the planets through countless millennia of isolation from the great bulk of mankind, that the people could even begin to fathom what had taken place. The old ways spoke of such things such as good and evil, the demonic, and the gods. Many worlds rediscovered ancient beliefs, and through them found a way of making sense of the events of the Horus Heresy. The Emperor, now a nigh lifeless husk enthroned upon Terra, soon took on an aspect of a distant creator god, sitting in judgment over all of mankind. Within decades of the Emperor's ascension to the Golden Throne, 1 million and more cults had sprung to worship him. Many were informed by beliefs that predated the Great Crusade, while others appeared to have come into being almost overnight. Many worlds gave birth to dozens and even hundreds of cults, all venerating the Emperor, yet each doing so in an entirely unique manner. Perhaps these cults soon came to blows, and tragically, brother turned upon brother, as they had during the dark days of the heresy. Now they did so in the name of the Emperor himself. In time, most of the Imperium's worlds would be dominated by a single native-born cult, and especially successful or ruthless cults would spread the entire planetary system, and even whole sectors. Throughout this turbulent period, visionaries and prophets went forth amongst the dispossessed people of the Imperium, each preaching their own interpretation of what had become a widespread belief in the divinity of the Emperor. There were many disagreements and much bloodshed, and still precious little in the way of central organization. In time, it was perhaps inevitable that a single cult would gain dominance, and that cult was the temple of the Savior Emperor. With the rebuilding of Terra following the destruction wrought during the siege of the Emperor's palace at the height of the heresy, a similar reconstruction of the Imperium's faith had begun. The Temple of the Savior Emperor came into being when a senior officer of the Imperial Guard, based on Terra itself, claimed to have received the wisdom of the Emperor in a series of visions. This man, whose original name is lost to history, renamed himself the Prophet, and he preached the revelation to his peers amongst the highest of the echelons of the Imperium's ruling institutions. In a short time, the new cult was spread far and wide, and its converts were all from the echelons of the imperial life, whose duties took them and their faith to every corner of the Imperium. Where they traveled, the adherents of the cult spread the word of him, and often brought unity of regions still reeling from the anarchy of the Horus Heresy. Of course, these zealous individuals found many who opposed them, but they had the resources of those political and economic to annihilate any opposition. Many were absorbed into this new faith, and those who still refused to cooperate were preached against, and entirely new converted populations would rise up against those amongst their number who would not accept the temple. Though never openly espoused by him, the Temple of the Savior Emperor was the dominant strand of faith across 2/3 of the Imperium. In fact, the only institutions which did not come into line with its teachings were that of the Space Marines and the Cult Mechanicus, both of which had their own traditions and belief, and who were besides too powerful to be forcibly converted. However, in the 8th edition Codex of the Sisters of Battle, we see that the Emperor is worshipped in many different ways. The cult Imperialis is one of the few common factors that linked the desperate worlds of the Imperium together. No matter what conditions prevail upon a world within the Imperium, the cult will always be there. The ways in which the Emperor is worshipped are multitudinous. To some, he is revered as a distant patriarchal and human figure. Others identify him with the aspect of nature, but all of the creeds of the cult agree upon this one thing. There is only one Emperor. To worship a pantheon of gods and put other gods alongside him is mere heresy. The ecclesiarchy maintains and promotes the cult galaxy-wide, and where possible tries to sanction the worship of the Emperor, no matter how bizarre it may seem. Very few practices are proscribed, and even such abominations such as human sacrifice are useful to the Imperium, for it is easy to convince a newly encountered culture that approves of such customs to give up its psykers to the black ships. One of the ecclesiarchy's tasks is to record the multiplicity of tradition that in which the Emperor is honored. In that way, two preachers from opposite sides of the galaxy will know, no matter what their title or manner of expressing their devotion might be, that neither is a heretic. The ecclesiarchy sends out mission fleets for precisely this purpose, whose flotillas of blessed spacecraft slowly circle a particular part of the galaxy, recording new variants of the cult, correcting serious heresies, and proselytizing to newly discovered populations of humans. To all, the Emperor is a living god. He may be tens of thousands of light years away, but that he exists, the inhabitants of the Imperium know, so faith is an easy thing. Some among the ecclesiarchy and Inquisition may argue that men should be more ardent in their devotion to him, but though some may be lax in their adulation, and their blasphemies or heretical curses to the master of mankind is nevertheless rare to meet a man who would dare deny the Emperor's divinity. So as we can see here, there are many ways in which the ecclesiarchy kind of relaxes its hold on what humanity should be worshipping and how they're worshipping the Emperor. So because of this, they're able to basically wrangle mankind through the use of faith and basically allow themselves to keep power and keep humanity in check. Now, as we all know, the Imperial Creed does change from planet to planet. One of the more well-known is that of Vulcan's homeworld, Nocturne, and how they revere the Emperor, vastly different than that of other worlds. But that is a video for another time. So again, guys, let me know your thoughts on the Imperial Creed. Do you believe that the Emperor should be worshipped? And also, what do you think of the ecclesiarchy? They have a military at their behest, with that being the Sisters of Battle. So if they need to, they will call upon these warrior nuns to fight against anybody who kind of gives them any flack for the way they're treating humanity through the use of religion and persecution. So with that being said, let's not be heretics and give this video a like, comment, and share, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next one. This has been the Sound Alchemist, part of OneMindSyndicate, and I'll see you then. Peace.
Always used to put my freedom first in any situation.